Howdy, all you delicious people. I'm here today to review P2. So, I, for the goofy brain of me, was to think that somehow this is to be a whole movie about someone really needing to go on and use the bathroom, and every time she would go on, like, the bathrooms are out of order, all the doors are locked, she would have to scramble to go on and find somebody to help her go to the bathroom, and the further and further this all builds, the more that this girl just loses her mind and just desperately, like, out of just peeing rage, just takes it out on people. It's like, nah, nah, nah. That would be the funny way of which that I would write this film. Um, but yeah, like, we're, of course, not getting that kind of film here. So instead, what ends up actually happening is we have Angela that seems to be working at this certain business, and it, of course, is to be the end of her workday. So she's there so late that a security guard has to go on and let her out to go to this parking garage. So we have Angela that makes it to this parking garage to realize that her car doesn't work. So Angela meets up with Thomas, who seems to be the security guard that is awkward but nice. So Thomas even offers Angela, like, well, hey, would you like to spend, like, Christmas with me and have a good meal? And Angela's like, no, I'm sorry, I have other plans. So we have Angela that is trying to figure out an alternate way to get out of this building, and she goes on to hail a cab. Come to find out, that doesn't work either. So Angela finally has to figure out a way to get out of this building, and she then finds herself to be getting out of consciousness as she is to wake up next to a now Thomas who is wearing this Santa Claus suit. So Angela is to start to realize that her leg is chained to this table, and she now realizes that she's going to have to completely change her Christmas plans because Thomas wants her there with him to spend Christmas together. So, at some points, we have Thomas come off as kind of this, like, whiny baby villain at certain points, in all brutal honesty, but I would also state that P2 is, at the end of the day, a very okay film. I would go on to say that it's a solid okay film. Where can you go on and see this movie? Currently, this movie is available on Vudu, VUDU, as well as also it possibly being on Amazon's and a lot of other convenient places for absolutely free. Vudu, all you need is a Google email, and really you can go and there's a whole section of Vudu that has a free section that you can go and watch a ton of films for absolutely free. There's no fee. So, and of course P2 is one of those. So with that said, yeah, like, it's very quick and very easy to explain this film. Plus, this movie seems to be a very quick movie for me. Like, I thought it was like, man, like, there doesn't really seem to be, like, a huge number of events in this film, but still. So, with that said, let's go on and let's double fire this bad boy up, because about that time, yet again, to of course go into spoiler time, it's about that time again to spoil this movie. So in the beginning of this film, we find a car where a person is desperately trying to get out of their trunk. And then I was like, okay, what does that visual mean? And then so all of a sudden we find Angela, who is at her office getting these calls. And so Angela is dealing with this seemingly investor who is to be frustrated that $3 million wasn't going to the right place that he wants it to. And Angela's like, well, I'm sorry, but, like, that was a clear mistake. So, and, like, there is to be like a massive problem with that one mistake. So Angela all of a sudden is to also get another call from a family member of hers, which I think is Lorraine. And so Lorraine is calling Angela and telling her, like, well, hey, like, are you on your way yet? Like, are you getting home? Like, you're kind of late already. Like, come on, like, let's go. Like I need you to be here for the holidays, and plus also like you have to bring this Santa Claus suit, and everybody's getting really antsy, yada yada yada. So Angela's like, well, I'll be there. Like, I'll be late, but I'll be there. So all of a sudden, Angela's boss arrives into her office, and so we have Angela's boss, who I believe is Mr. Harper, that goes on to explain to her that he is very apologetic in his state that what he had gone on to do uh, with her in that elevator was just a massive lapse in judgment. Mr. Harper was drunk. There is some kind of chaotic things going on in his home life because he had gone on to just have a new baby, and Angela's like, well, yeah, all forgiven. Like, stop talking. Like, just, like, go away. And Mr. Harper's like, but I'm really. And Angela's like, yeah, I get it. Just go away. So, Angela goes on to finally, at the end of the day, the only person left in this building is a security guard named Carl. So, Carl's like, oh, I thought everybody was gone. So, Angela and Carl's conversation is really kind of nice and very sweet. Carl is stating that like he's gonna be off the next 3 days because the building's gonna be closed because of holiday. So like at least he'll get the next 3 days off. And Angela's like, yeah, like that'll be great. So they're both talking about their holiday plans, and it's like, oh, okay, all right. So uh, we have Carl and Angela. Like Carl lets Angela out to this parking lot. We'll have a nice day and Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas to you. So Angela gets to her car and then realizes that her car won't start. Pantomiming driving. So Angela then goes within this parking lot to find that there's like an office off to the side. Angela goes in to open up this office to find that there's a big, massive dog there. So Angela's like, oh, okay. And so we have the security guard named Thomas who's like, hey, like how can I help you? Angela goes on to state that her car won't start, and Thomas is like, well, maybe all you need is just a jump. Like, maybe some jumper cables and that'll work. So Angela and Thomas go on to try to see if they can jump her car, and it's not working. So Angela gets every bit of all of her stuff and has her now needing to go to the upper part of the building so that way she can call a cab. So before Thomas lets her go into the top part of the building, Thomas is to ask, it's like, well, hey, like I know you might have plans, but hey, would you like to go on and share Christmas dinner with me? Like, I'll be all by myself. And Angela's like, well, like, I'm sorry, but I have plans. And Thomas is just like, well, like, you know what? Like, people for, like, this time of year should be kind of thankful and grateful. And Angela's like, well, hey, thanks for letting me in to get a cab. So, and plus Angela mentions that she's very just exhausted. She's had a long day. So, Angela goes on to go into the upper part of the building. And so Angela is calling for this cab. And so Angela's also calling her sister to say, like, you're not going to believe this. So, stating what had happened. So, Angela goes on to then get this cab, and she realizes that she can't get out of the building. She, of course, is trying to hit buttons, hoping that she can call one of the security guards down there, and no one comes. We have Angela that rushes down back to the parking garage to hope that she can call another security guard to get out of there so she can get to this cab. and come to find out the cab leaves. So Angela is now ticked off because there's no security guards present, and all of a sudden all the lights start to turn off. Angela then is to adjust her cell phone so she can kind of see where she's going to have Thomas creep up from behind her, chloroforming her, knocking her unconscious. So when Angela wakes up, it seems that she's getting this blurry vision of a Santa Claus suit wearing Thomas that is to go on like, ho ho ho, like, have you been a little girl this, or have you been a good girl this year, Angela? And then Wes is like, oh yeah, I'm just joking. So all of a sudden Angela just kind of goes back into falling asleep. So Angela then re-wakes back up, and Thomas is now next to her in his Santa Claus suit, and Thomas is like, oh yeah, like I just wore this because you had this, and like I was just trying to make fun. So Angela is to realize that she's going to get sick, she's going to hurl, and so she rushes to find the closest garbage can, and instead vomits all over the ground because, of course, her leg being chained to this table. So Thomas then is to go on like, oh hey, let me help you, and so Thomas goes on to kind of wipe the vomit and then kind of pick Angela up to put her back into this chair. So we have Angela that is talking to Thomas and stating, it's like, well, hey, like, my boyfriend is going to come for me. And Thomas is like, oh, like, how long have you been with this boyfriend? And Angela's like, for 2 years. And Thomas is like, 2 years? Sounds like wedding bells. Like, wow. Like, so he should almost be like your fiance, right? Like, for how long you guys have been together? By the way, like, what is your, what does your boyfriend do? And so Angela's like, well, he's a journalist. And Thomas is like, oh, what, where does he work? And Angela's like, the Post. And Thomas is like, you don't say. I have the Post right here. Let me go on and get it. And Angela's like, no, it's the Internet Post. It's something completely different. And Thomas is like, oh, all right, okay. Well, like, what kind of car does your boyfriend drive? And Angela's like, a Toyota. And so Thomas is like, well, depending on how quick that your boyfriend can drive, and also depending on what exact car he has, like, he should, for how much he loves you, like, he should be, like, pulling up right now, desperately wanting to get to you and figure out what happened. And so he should be pulling up right now. And so Thomas is going into, like right out this door, and he's like looking around. It's like, oh well, like, I guess he's not here. So Thomas is telling Angela, it's like, well, like, you know what, like, it seems that you barely know me and you're telling me all of this, like, real personal information, and it's either the fact that, like, really, like, you, like, really want to get to know me, or that you're lying to me. So Thomas tells Angela that it's like, well, like, and so, like, I want you to go on, and I realize that you do have holiday plans, but I want you to cancel them. Because Thomas starts rattling off every bit of Angela's family members, making Angela realize that Thomas has been doing a little bit of studying of Angela, so this isn't some random occurrence. This has been a thing that has been planned to a T. So Thomas, of course, goes on to make Angela call her family. And so Thomas is like, well, I'm sure you're going to easily come up with some lie to have this whole situation work out, so that way you can just stay with me for the holidays. So Angela goes on to call her family. And Angela states to her sister, it's like, I'm sorry, but I'm sick. And we, of course, have Angela's sister that's like, really? Like, come on. Like, you're sick? Like, you should really put your family before your work, Angela. I would have just been like, you. F you. But so we have Angela that goes on to instead go on to talk to her mother. And, like, Angela's getting a little choked up from talking to her mother, having to deny or lie to her mother and state, like, well, yeah, like, I am sick, like, I just can't get to this part. And so Angela's mother's like, no, like, I completely get it. Like, hey, if you don't have that Santa costume to us, that's completely fine. Like, we'll figure something out. It's okay. So, like, hey, just gotta, just do what you need to do. So, they hang up the phone. So, Thomas is to say to Angela, it's like, well, wow, like you gave up your Christmas plans for me, and so I think I need to go on and give you a gift. So Thomas goes on and gives Angela this gift, and Angela opens it and is to pull it out and realize that it's a VHS tape. Okay, what's a VHS tape for? And Thomas is like, oh, like I'm gonna go on and show this to you. So Thomas shows Angela this tape, and the tape, of course, is of Angela in this elevator with her boss, and her boss is kind of being very handsy on her. And so, again, Thomas has gone on to do a little bit of research before really just bumping into Angela this night. So, Thomas is going on and stating it's like, well, like, I think both you and I should go on this little road trip, this little drive. So Thomas goes on and unchains Angela to have them go into Thomas's car. So Thomas then drives Angela through the rest of this parking garage, and Angela's like, well, I thought like we were going to go like outside. And Thomas is like, oh, no, 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 like we're still going on a drive. So we have Thomas that shows Angela why they are in this parking garage, and come to find out she is going to meet up with her boss that is now duct taped and is to now be on this chair, all kind of gagged. So Thomas is to go on and tell Angela that she needs to get even with this man that took advantage of her. That she needs to go on and beat him to death. Or just beat him. And Angela's like, no, like I can't. Like he apologized, I forgave him, and so Angela is consistently over and over again, whenever she is to respond to Thomas, she ends up stating his name. Like, please, Thomas, don't let me do this. To the point of Thomas just getting really aggravated with that. And so Thomas is saying, like, why are you stating my name consistently? Like, I get what you're trying to do psychologically, and it's really ticking me off. So we have Angela that's like, I don't think I can go through it. And so Thomas is like, oh, I'm sorry. Like, you're a good person. Like, I am sorry that I even, like, suggested for you to do this. So Thomas gets out of the car himself. And so Thomas takes the weapon that he was going to give Angela, and he ends up going on to consistently smack this guy back and forth. And Angela is looking at, I believe, Mr. Harper, and Angela's like, I'm sorry, like, So Thomas is really wailing on this guy, but it seems that he is still conscious. So Thomas ends up going back into the car, and he's like, well, you know what? Like, I really think that Mr. Harper, like, I think he really just needs to go uh, himself on a ride. So Thomas then starts driving the car, and he now has this chair connected to this car. And so now Thomas plans to ram Mr. Harper against this wall with this car. So Thomas gets smushed once, and then we realize that, like, Mr. or Thomas smushes Mr. Harper once and realizes that he's still alive, and does it 2 to 3 more times. Angela is desperately, like, calling for Thomas to stop, and so finally we have Angela that gets out of the car and runs off. So Angela has cuffs on her hands. So the first thing that Angela does is sit down and tries to get her legs underneath her hands so she can have her hands, like, free, and her hands, of course, are in front of her. So Angela is now going back to Thomas's office so she can go on and get her cell phone so she can call the police. So Angela tries to go back into Thomas's office and then realizes that the dog is still there. So we have Angela that desperately gets to her phone and goes on to get to the phone, and then goes to, like, the opening where there's kind of this little fence in between the outside and this parking garage, and we have Angela that outstretches her hand, even to the point of hurting her hand, so that way she can go on and call the police. So Angela somehow is to get service, and so she calls the police, and she drops her phone to where she can no longer call the police again. So Angela is realizing that Thomas is coming back, and Thomas now has this dog. So we have Angela that is just kind of hiding away from Thomas, and I think this is where we have like, Angela running off to get to this elevator, and we have Thomas and the dog that are almost there to get to her. So Angela is to now realize that whatever floor she goes to, that, like, she can't, like, get away from Thomas, so she just is hiding in this elevator. She even finds Carl's body, and she realizes, like, oh my god, like, Carl is hurt. So we have Angela staying in this elevator, and we have at some point where Angela is kind of hitting this talk button, hoping that she can call out to somebody, and all of a sudden we have this very accented man, and so Angela is calling this man and talking to him. It's like, okay, like call the police. Like, this guy is trying to kill me, and so the guy's like, no, I think he's trying to help you. And so Angela's like, no, this guy's trying to hurt me. Like, this guy's trying to kill me. He's like, no. And so we come to find out that the guy on the other side of things is actually Thomas. And he's like, no, Angela, like, I was trying to help you. Like, I love you, Angela. And so we really just, like, I was like, man, what a great, just effing way to just kind of mess with somebody's brain. So to think that it's somebody else, but no, it's actually just Thomas, and he has kind of disguised his voice. So we have now Thomas that is telling Angela, it's like, well, hey, like, you need to get out of the elevator, Angela. You need, I need to be with you. So Angela's like, no, I'm gonna stay in the elevator. And so Thomas is like, well, okay, well, I'm gonna make you get out. So Thomas ends up going for this hose and is to get to the upper level of the elevator to then put this hose on top of the elevator. And now all of a sudden we have water that is pouring into this elevator. And now we have Angela realizes that she has to get out of the elevator. So Angela gets out of the elevator. Carl's body starts flying out of it. And so Angela is like grabbing on Carl, like, Carl, are you okay? And then she's like, like, there's nothing I can do with Carl. Like, he's gonna have to just leave. I'll get help later. So Angela now is to just try to figure out where she can go next. And so what ends up happening is Thomas is to finally meet up with Angela, and he ends up tasing her, and he ends up putting her in her trunk because it seems that the police have arrived. Because we have Thomas who had gone back to his office, and he is listening to I'll Have a Blue, Blue Christmas, the Elvis Christmas song. And so Thomas is just all of a sudden like doing like the Elvis stuff, and he's like doing this dance, and I was like, man, like so much about this is just so interesting. How like we have Thomas like blood on his face, and we have like in a horror film like using Christmas music is just so interesting to just kind of see that dynamic of a cheerful like Christmas song, like Santa Baby or something like that being used in like the beginning of this or whichever, and we're using this like Christmas music in a horror song or a horror movie. And it's so interesting to just kind of like kind of mash those things together. It's so fascinating. Kind of like the singing in the rain moment with A Clockwork Orange. It's kind of really weird to have like this very like cheerful, happy song while someone is probably going to end up dead. So it's always kind of just fascinating, like the psyche of how they do like a film and whatever. So we and also there's certain uh Nightmare on Elm Street like kind of kids songs or like 1, 2, Freddy's coming for you, like that whole thing. So anyways, I'm going off on a tangent here. So we have Thomas that catches up with Angela, puts her in this trunk, tasers her, and says like, I'm sorry, I have to do this. Because Thomas is going on and seeing that two cop cars or a cop car has pulled up with two officers in it. So Thomas then goes on to meet with the officers, and they're saying like, well, hey, like we ended up getting a call from here, and so we're just responding to this call. And Thomas is just like, oh, okay, well, like I don't know why you're here, like there's nothing going on tonight. So we have the officers that are like, well, like we just want to kind of like just drive around anyways, just gonna see what's going on. And we have Thomas that's just like, okay, all right, like do whatever you want. So by the time that Angela wakes up and is just try to get out of her trunk, and by the time she gets out of it and she runs to get to the police officers, we find out that the officers are almost left, and Angela is desperately trying to call out to them, but then Thomas and his dog are right by the gate, trying to prevent Angela from getting any further. So the gate then closes. So we then have the dog that ends up getting unleashed and is chasing after Angela. So we get to where Angela goes into this car. So she's hiding out and she's desperately hoping that she can get away. We also had one moment where Thomas was to find out where Angela was because she had wet feet and he could see her track marks. Thomas goes and immediately finds out that she's underneath this truck and he starts popping the tires and Angela just starts running off and he tries to chase after her. But then he realizes that the cops are coming. So he then tases her and then puts her in the trunk. So we have Angela that has this dog and he breaks through this window to get to her. So we forcibly have Angela that needs to dispatch this dog because the dog bit Angela in the leg. So it's almost like Cujo all over again. It's horrific. So the girl has to go in and stab into the dog, and we can see the dog yelping, or hear the dog yelping. I'm like, no, don't. And so the dog is dead, sadly enough. So Angela gets out of the car, and she just continues to just figure out how she can go on and still get the heck out of here. So we have Thomas that is kind of looking around for Angela and finds his dog that is dead. So now, like, Thomas is like, well, like, why did you kill my dog? Like, you're a horrible person. Like, all I wanted to do was love you, and, like, you killed my dog. So, like, it's just kind of funny how, like, Thomas seems to, like, twist and turn and, like, that everything is, like, not his fault. It's all Angela. Like, why could she gone on and done this? Like, all I wanted to do was love her. Kind of thing. So, we finally have, at some point, where Thomas is to go on and find out where Angela is. And so Thomas is to open this car for him to get this spiked object lodged into his eye. We also had Angela that was desperately trying to find this one office, and she again tries to call the police, and the police is on hold. But it's like, I'm sorry, this is holiday, we're getting a lot of calls. So Angela is just on hold for a very long time, and she ends up kind of grabbing certain items so that way she can uncuff herself, and she's waiting for the police. I'm sorry, that was a phone call if you heard any of that. So we had Angela that desperately is to go and get these car keys, and so she goes in this car, and Thomas then gets to her. She stabs him into the eye with this metal thing. He pulls it out, and so we had Angela. I'm getting a little ahead of myself. We had Angela that grabs one of these cars and starts driving around the parking lot. We have Thomas that gets into his car, and with Angela just going in circles, just driving around consistently with this car, we finally have Thomas who smashes into Angela's car, and somehow the car flips over. By the time that Thomas gets to Angela, Angela stabs Thomas in the eye, and then is to cuff him to this car. So Thomas again is to be upset because of Angela, and like, why is she doing this to him? So we all of a sudden, while Angela's walking away, realizing that she has won, we have Thomas who calls her a awful an awful name to where she's just like, oh, okay, so you're calling me names now. So we start to realize that there seems to be a lot of gas coming out of this car. Angela then goes to realize that she had taken this taser from Thomas, and so Angela uses the Thomas. That doesn't make any sense. Angela uses the taser to ignite this gasoline to then have this car burn up and possibly explode. So we have Angela that goes on to have these keys, and so she then goes on to get out of this parking garage and just starts walking, endlessly walking, and that's how the movie ends. So, with that said, let me know in the comments below if there's anything that I forgot about, because I'm sure that there is. There might have been stuff that I probably did state, but out of order. I apologize, but otherwise, most of the movie was seemingly covered for the most point. So, I'm going to go on and get out of here. Let me know in the comments below how you felt about P2. But without further ado, I'm going to try and get out here so I can go on and cover other things for the day. So, goodbye, everybody. Bye, everybody.